about today's episode. We have Matthew and Max on the show today, and we're going to be talking about video games. So before we get started, let's just introduce who we have. We have Max, who's a business owner here in Kansas City.
Yes, yeah, I run a local business here in Kansas City. It's general contracting. We kind of just do residential and commercial work. So, other than that, I'm a dad. I'm a husband. That's pretty much it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for all the work you did on the deck recently.
Yeah, my name's Matthew. I'm a creative content director as well as a gamer. I do love my video games, as well as a designer. I am a game designer and I work in animation specifically tailored for video games. And so building a career in video games specifically. And so, that's a little bit about me. I love the creative world.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad to have you guys on because the one video game experience I had that was kind of related to this topic was kind of from 5 years ago called We Were Here, and it got really dark actually when I looked at the storyline. Played a little like Super Smash in high school.
There you go.
I mean, like, so yeah, like just kind of on the outskirts. But the reason why we even have this episode today is because I remember talking to you, Max, when I was talking about this podcast a few months ago, and you were just sharing your story and your experience playing Diablo. And when we were on the phone, I was just thinking, oh my goodness, like I need to have you on so you can share because I don't think everybody knows. And I think it'd be helpful just to hear like your experience. So
Sure.
Why don't you share your story?
Yeah, Diablo 3 was the game. I mean, they have they're at 4 now, right? It's a pretty successful franchise, if you will, by Blizzard. And let's see, that was at least like 6 or 7 years ago. And my brother-in-law, we love to play all the time. But the interesting thing about that was when I started playing that game, the things that were happening around me were changing dynamically. So Diablo is and you can speak a little bit more to the mechanics of it. Like it's got a really interesting hook. It allows for character customization and it's got a really cool gameplay loop. But it uses pretty dark fantasy themes. And so what ended up happening is, so like I got hooked onto that game, and I'm talking like it's a drug. It's not a drug. It was like I got hooked onto this game, and then my wife started playing it, and she hardly ever plays video games. And it was super interesting and fun. And then my brother-in-law got playing. Like it was kind of a big deal. We'd spend hours and hours and hours playing this game. But what I noticed is that it was kind of changing how I thought perspective wise, just in every day. So like the themes in the game were very closely related to some of the like Christian values that I believe in. Some of the lords of hell that you were fighting were kind of directly correlated to some of the demons that you find in the Bible. You walk around as this Nephilim, so this half human, half God thing that's going around killing all these demons. And so like on the surface, it feels like an awesome game playing, right? But when you start to like look at how it changes you and your perspective while you're playing it, I think that's where the gray starts to, it's no longer black and white, right? Like there are people that play on the surface, and then there are people that get into the lore and the fantasy, and I think it changes their perspective on the world. And so that was kind of happening to me. I was kind of envisioning different character ways that I could make things work. And, I was kind of immersing myself into the lore and and you kind of have to find all the Easter eggs and just to kind of get to that like 100% completion, that the achievements that they kind of give you on Xbox. And so I don't know if it was so much as like Blizzard putting in this like very addictive loop into their game, or if it was more me kind of allowing the immersion at a level that I probably shouldn't have, right? That was causing me to kind of question what was going on. And so, like, I mean, it was to the point where I felt like portals were opening up in my room, like spirits, like the spirit world was coming into my apartment, and seeing black figures all over the place, and you'd hear sights and sounds that just didn't make sense, but like outside of my apartment. And so, when I was looking back at that experience, I attribute a lot of what I was seeing and feeling in the spiritual world to that game. And it probably made me a little bit more sensitive to that area, just because of the level of fixation I kind of had on it. So, but what happened is we associated the two things that were going on, because it wasn't just me, it was my wife, and it was my brother, and my brother-in-law, and we were kind of all feeling this oppressive kind of feeling. Deleted the game, got rid of it. About a week and a half later, got right with God, and things kind of went away and got back to like this normalcy that I kind of was yearning for at the time, because it was a good 6-7 month stretch where we were kind of just in this loop of, this is what we did on our evenings, this is how we kind of wind down from our daily life. So that was kind of my experience playing Diablo, if you will.
Yeah. So would you expound a little, just for those who might be unfamiliar with the spiritual world, like when you were sensing oppression, when you were talking about those figures, dark figures that were in your apartment, what does that look like? Maybe expound a little more on that.
So what it looked like for us was it started off as like us sitting on the couch, right? Just kind of like hanging out. And then you would kind of notice like this figure out the side of your eye, right?
Yeah.
Or it would be like this, it felt uneasy in the room. Or it was, you noticed a presence, but you couldn't place it.
Right.
It started at that level. And then it started like evolving into manifestations. And that was, it was waking up at 2-3 in the morning with, something holding you down, or you can't, like, in all of this. I mean, there is a medical explanation of, oh, well, that's just like, you're paralyzed and you wake up and you're halfway in the sleep, halfway not. But I mean, what I saw, what I felt, how I experienced that, and I attribute it to the spiritual, like the oppression, I was opening doors and allowing the enemy to come through. At first not knowing, but then as I learned, and it was a learning curve. It was trying to figure out, okay, where's the line? Where do I need to go with it? And that's kind of how it kind of evolved. So then you start seeing, black figures at night. You start, witnessing, like, I don't know, almost like poltergeist stuff, like the Hollywood campy stuff, but it's rooted in real world situations. So they expand a lot on that, but we were seeing that in our apartment. So,
yeah. So when you were experiencing that, what was kind of going through your head? Like, how did you connect it with Diablo?
Right. So at first it was, okay, this is like my journey. This is where I'm at. I had asked, the Lord to see more, to be able to kind of lift the veil a little bit, but enough to where it wouldn't, scare me a little bit, which I don't know if that was a mistake or not, but, it happened during a time I was playing this game. Right. And so I think God allowed me to see the impact of what I was playing, how I was playing, what it was actually like doing in my life. And so there was that spiritual development phase that was going on in tandem. And then so what we noticed is the more time we expanded like playing the game, the more that this would start to occur. And so the correlation, right, between how much we were actually spending time playing versus how many times this thing was actually happening in our apartment. And it was just random enough at first to where it didn't seem like it was connected, but then as you go down the rabbit hole, you remove bricks and layers of awareness, and there it is, as you wonder how you got here. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with the sleep paralysis, Stephen Bancart's, he actually wrote this book about the second coming of, I think I have it here. Oh, I moved it. I think it's the second coming of the New Age, but he talks about how when he was doing astral projection, there would be times where, you know, sometimes people are having these positive experiences, but then other times they're being held against their will, can't go back into your body, or unable to move. And I've heard that in many accounts of people involved in the New Age. Yeah. So, yeah. Can you comment? You were saying earlier about how there's this lore and this kind of alternate storyline. You can kind of go down the rabbit hole, but it also altered how you think. Yeah. Could you kind of explain like what you were thinking that you kind of didn't realize this change in thinking while playing? Or
before you jump into that,
there you go.
We're still at.
We good?
Nice.
Brain. I can't stop seeing it.
Turn it back on, Nick. Yeah. All right. So getting in the lore, you really have to think somewhat like the character, right? Yeah. You have to understand, like, put yourself in your character's shoes to be able to see like what decisions you would make. And on the surface, like it's a top down, like you're not really immersed, but it's there. You can see kind of like the game progression from a different angle. And so what that it's kind of hard to explain without like you playing.
Well, maybe you could give just an overview for those who might not know, just like that worldview of the game. When I did the D&D episode, I kind of gave this like, oh, this is their, you know, the gods in that world and the creation story. So maybe you could just give a brief overview of like just kind of like the universe that game lives in. And I mean, Diablo, for those who don't know, means devil in what language? Spanish?
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, maybe give a little bit an overview there.
It's like that, yeah. So like they use dark fantasy, so like it's not directly correlated, but I mean in this case it kind of is. Like Diablo definitely means devil. But like you would go around and you would fight literally the lords of hell, going level by level. Eventually you'd go up to heaven, you'd fight angels there, and then you'd go down to hell and you'd literally fight the devil. And so like as you were progressing through these levels actually meant something to the demon that you were going to fight at the end, right? So like gluttony had one, like you'd go through the dungeon and there would be, you know, stuff all over that representing of that demon. And so like lore wise, you would have to understand like, okay, well, like this is kind of what they're representing, and this is the decisions I would have to make, or like this is how I'd get out my character, or this is, you know, like I could, if I did this X amount of times, then you know, it would unlock a secret area to be able to do that. And so that's a little bit of the metagame that you would have to understand. The lore like just goes on quite a bit. It's not as deep as say like Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons is, God, there's so much there. Like you could spend
I did a whole episode on it. Feel free to listen to it if you haven't already.
Yeah. So but in this case, like it is finding those Easter eggs. You have to immerse yourself. You have to figure out, and in people that are kind of completionists are that way. They want to know every nuance that the game has to offer. And so I was headed down that path. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was kind of thinking about this episode, thinking about the story you shared, researching D&D, I'll just briefly share my experience with this game, and then I'm going to kick it off to Matthew. But I was playing this game around the pandemic. It was by this company called Total Mayhem. And they did, we were here too, and then we were here together. And it was really cool. It's like this, 2-player puzzle game, if you will. Like there's 2 players, they're wandering in a blizzard, and then they find this castle. They come in and they get separated and have these walkie-talkies. And so one player can see, but the other player's maybe doing something. So maybe one player has the answer to the code and another player has to decode, or they're in a maze and you say, turn left, turn right, or like, it's really fun and interactive. And it was done really beautifully. Like beautiful music, and there were little pockets of story. And I was playing and I was intrigued because I'm not a big video game player. And so playing, I was like, oh, this is awesome, especially, during the pandemic when you're just kind of stuck at home. But it got really dark, just like the storyline had this king who basically, there were like some deaths in the family with his children, and then his wife wasn't talking, and then there were these affairs happening, and there was this Joker person who persuaded him to find the cure for immortality, but then he signed a pact with the devil and then killed everybody, and then the castle's haunted. And so the story unfolds, you have a chapter here, a letter here, but as the game progressed, and thankfully I only played 2 games, I didn't play the third one, but as the game's progressing, you're like putting back these puzzle pieces to basically complete the spell, and then you'll reawaken the Joker. And like, anyways, there was just a lot of the supernatural in this very like fantastical world that was really dark. Just a lot of death and taking matters in your own hand, and just the desire for immortality, for eternity, for and then betrayal and affairs and like the whole thing. And I was like, OMG, like the one game other than the Super Smash that I played is like this. And then, looking at D&D, and then hearing Diablo, and then just kind of like the fruit of, I don't know, like there's these shut-ins in Japan I know people who they just were playing games, maybe it's easier, a way to escape, like you were saying, or social anxiety or whatever it is, and then just over time it just becomes this escape, this way of kind of processing life, and this comfort zone, if you will. And just some of the fruit of it with maybe less in-person interactions or hygiene or exercise or anyways. And I remember during church too, like people have these all-nighters, and they bring their computers in, set up their little network, their LAN parties or something. Again,
LAN parties. Yes.
LAN. As you can tell, I'm like very much on the outside of this. But yeah, those are just kind of some thoughts I had, and curious to hear your thoughts, Matthew.
Sure, yeah. So me, as someone who, play a lot of video games, love video games, as well as being a designer myself and a storyteller through animation, whether that's animated form or I'm gearing it more lately for the game industry, which is like a subcategory of animation. And my perspective on the game industry would be, or at least as a Christian, I can only talk of my perspective as a Christian playing video games and how I interact with them, is like many forms of media, it's a double-edged sword. In the sense that like it would be similar to my view on like sugar, where you consume a certain amount of sugar and it's probably not going to impact your health. You consume a gluttonous amount of sugar and it's probably going to have some happy impacts on your health, right? And so games, depending on their level of fascination in your own heart, like if you delve into it and you love everything about it and it's your whole identity. Now, again, I'm talking from the perspective of a Christian. If your identity is now more in the fact that you're a gamer and you love games, and less in the fact that you're a son of God, right? You're in his family, you're born again believer, right? Now games have taken a different place in your heart. And with media in general, in the sense of like films, TV, games, it's largely a industry that is not overrun by Christians. There's very few Christians within that industry at high performative directorial levels. So the people with the vision are typically not often Christians that are going to use their background and their understanding of spirituality and demonology and the reality of the supernatural as an influence in their work. The person at the helm of the ship shearing is often someone who doesn't have those particular convictions or beliefs. And so you're going to have a piece of work that is going to be made from a different perspective or mindset. That being said, a person interacting with that content, depending on where they're coming from in their own life, it can be a door for demonic activity, just like someone suffering from depression. Is depression demonic? No, it's a condition and a medical condition that really sucks. But oftentimes, folks who are spiraling in depression might also experience unusual amounts of panic, unusual amounts of anxiety, maybe even despair. And there are times where it kind of steps away from being just a negative experience in life that's due to like emotional wounds. And sometimes they can experience demonic oppression on top of their normal depression, or did I say demonic oppression on top of what they're already experiencing? Because something that, and this is more of just something I've recently been thinking about and kind of seen and understood, is that, and this is my 100% just my perspective on the spiritual world, is demons like to kind of glob onto a wound or something that's not going right. And so these experiences can kind of flood around this. Now, that's kind of like a precursor to my opinions about games, in the sense that, like, I love video games. I play plenty of them. A lot of times, like earlier this morning, I was playing Minecraft with my younger brother and his girlfriend. And, we're half playing the game, half running around in circles, because our processing power was mainly being spent on our conversations happening, because we just wanted to hang out, and that was the medium that was allowing us to hang out, because we're in different states, and so we kind of connected over that. And so games are a source of entertainment, and the subject matter that you're engaging with, you need to be careful and wise about. And there's another thread and stream to the game industry, especially someone like myself who is a Christian in that industry, is there's the opportunity for creative people that are Christians to engage with this art form, because I believe storytelling ultimately is an art form. Whether you're a painter or a game designer, you're telling a story through what you create. And so there's an opportunity for Christians to gather together and collectively create a story that could glorify the Lord and be an awesome, beautiful story. And that doesn't mean that there aren't dark and negative things in it, because, I mean, you read through the book of Judges, and boy, there's some dark and nasty stuff in there. Well, we were just on Sunday talking about, what's the lady with the spike and the hammer?
Deborah. Oh, JL.
JL, yeah, you know what I mean? I was like, whoa, dude, that's pretty intense. That's some PG-13 rated action right there. But this is, this is not to condone or say violence is beautiful. That's not my statement. My statement is that, like, the story may contain dark or violent elements, but what is the underlying voice that you're trying to say? What's your statement with your story? Does it glorify the Lord, or does it elevate humanity and glorify ourselves? Does it glorify violence, saying that's the answer and solution? Just take matters in your own hand and cause violence? Or is there some other goal or some other element? And so the opportunity that I see within the game industry is it's rich for Christians to interact with and create their own stories. If you see a lot of content that, like, your spirit goes, ooh, that don't feel right, that feels dark, that feels spiritually heavy, and I don't want to engage with that, write your own story, And so I always have that kind of perspective of, like, come on up to the plate and come and join this movement of people getting involved in the arts broadly and using it as a medium to glorify the Lord. And I love the history of music in the church, where you look at, and I am not a scholar or a theologist, like theologian. Theologist is the scientific version of theology. No, but I'm not either one of those. And so, like, don't hold my perspectives as law or fact. These are stories I've heard. But, like, I think about the era where, like, electric guitar and drums was kind of like, ooh, you can't worship God with electric guitar and drums. Like,
it's the devil's music.
It's the devil's music, right? And we look at contemporary worship, and we have amazing, wonderful songs that use guitar, and because it's a paintbrush, and you're the person telling the story. Just like, you could also use that paintbrush, the guitar, to tell a different story, to express a different thing. And the same goes with the film industry, right? I mean, if you look back 15 years ago, I mean, again, I'm not a scholar, but I don't think there was much, if any, Christian film content. Right?
Left Behind, maybe.
Left Behind, maybe The Passion of the Christ, right?
Yeah.
Very little. And then now with the advent of the TV drama Chosen, right, where it's done very artfully and very skillfully, people are recognizing that you could have some pretty good, it's like, it's not bad.
Right.
It's not bad, right? I'm not going to throw out anyone under the bus, but there's definitely been Christian content that's sucks. It's not very good, you know. But
yeah, like you had to choose sometimes. Like, okay, I'm gonna watch this Christian thing, but it's not gonna be like great,
right?
know? But then with Jesus Revolution, and
you're seeing some incredible stuff.
There's something happening, but it's definitely counterculture. I say it's not the majority. It's totally definitely the minority. Some of it's crowdsourced, like with Angel Studios. But yeah, I see what you're saying. Like it's a tool, like it's a medium.
Yes. And so my vision or my hope is to see more people engaged. So it's not the minority. I mean, granted that it is, and then to take this conversation all the way through, the game industry right now is undersaturated, if not completely lacking in any kind of Christian content.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is there or have there been any video games, not ones that are like, oh yeah, this is like, oh, it's family friendly and edifying, but like, are there any overtly like, Christian, for example, Diablo, but you're like literally fighting with like, I don't know. Are there any that are currently out that you know about?
So I'm going to step away from speaking what's in production.
Okay.
Because there are people stepping up to the plate, and I'm hearing stories of people starting their own studios and stuff. So there's a movement happening. It's real. And that's super exciting for me. I love that. If you look historically, I mean, I can think of two. I did a short research paper in college about this topic, and there was one called catechism or whatever. It's a Catholic term, but it was a group of people that drummed up. They got raised support for a significant amount of money. I think it was around. Don't quote me. It was a lot of money. There is a lot of money. I was like, wow, good job. And they made a game, and I looked at it. It was, for its time, I'd like to say it was a good effort. It was rough, even for its time. And this was a while ago. And there's like one. I think I played an old. If you're familiar with the NES, the Nintendo from back in the day, not the Super Nintendo, but the NES. There was an old teal cartridge with said like Bible game or something, and you played as like Abraham and Noah grabbing the sheep and animals and putting them on the whatever. And so literally through fairly exhaustive study, I really only discovered two historically. Oh, and there was a Left Behind game, which was I'm not going to make too much commentary on it, but it was definitely a choice, considering the game was more of like a strategic war game, but also trying to get people saved with guns. You're getting the kind of picture here that it was like, maybe not the most sensitive or really great direction to build a game. Point is, really, there has not been much, if any, Christian content historically in the game industry, because the thing about games, just like a show, it takes a lot of money to make it. So you got to get investors. Yeah. And so convincing a ton of people that your game is worth playing and going to be fun is hard to do, period. Saying it's going to be super fun and it's a Christian game, a lot of investors are going to be like, yeah, no, I'm out. You put Christian on it, they're going to be out. So that's why you see stuff that's like crowdsourced and funded and things like that. But now with the game industry being more and more accessible, right? I can download Unreal Engine 5, I can make a game in there, and I can put it on Steam. Boom, we're a Christian creating his work of art, quote unquote, and putting it out there. So it's an exciting time to be a part of this generation because of the access. And I think it's the next area of creativity that Christians are going to be walking into. I mean, it's the reason I moved from where I lived and grew up to where I am now, even because I participated on this journey where the Lord said, hey, music, Christians step into that field and they're operating it. I tend to think of it as territory, right? The enemy has a lot of territory on earth, but then God's kingdom, he goes, that's not his territory. Creativity is mine. He goes, go out and be creative, right? So you see it in the music, we're seeing it in film, we're seeing it now even in television with like The Chosen and things like that. And I'm seeing it in the future with the video game industry. So that's my kind of admiration of like, hey guys, yes, there are, I've had my own experiences with games where there was one I played, the Lord literally told me, don't play that game ever again, right? And like most people that are on the more sensitive spiritual side could be like, yeah, don't, Matthew, come on, like look at the game, it's pretty dark, man. But I was like, oh, it's really cool, and I was playing it, and then he was like, don't ever touch that game again. And I was like, okay, I won't, whatever. And so like those stories and there are others I've heard with experiences of games they have demonic experiences. They're totally valid. Those stories are so valid because again, media is a double-edged sword. But that doesn't mean to throw the baby out with the bathwater, in my opinion. It's like there's still some awesome stuff out there. There's still good games out there that like some Minecraft. Just saying. No, I'm not endorsing any game. I'm not sponsored by
Minecraft did not sponsor the production.
yeah, right. But there's still plenty of fun to be had and experiences to have, and a great field of creativity to create art that has the label of video game.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying is, okay, video games, just like media, just like music, is a medium and a tool that can be used for good and for evil. And so maybe there's some people that have stepped up with Christian films or Christian music, but others have yet to do so, maybe in production, but not quite yet in the video game area. I want to kind of ask Max, because I remember on the phone you were kind of sharing how there were like some spells or incantations or something like that in Diablo. And so I guess I would say, because there's going to be probably so many different variations of games, but let's say someone's playing video games, or they have played and they're like, oh, what about this game? Like, what would be some red flags, or like some kind of like, oh, stay away from, stay clear of this kind of things to look for in a game, just based on your experience? And then also, like, how has your experience like changed the way like you spend your time, maybe with your wife and your brother-in-law, or just like how have you kind of changed? What has life been like after not playing?
Yeah, so let's see. It definitely ramped up my level of discernment when it comes with this kind of stuff. Just kind of understanding that there is a gray area when it comes to video games, because I totally agree. Like video games is a unique medium to be able to tell a story in a certain way, and a Christian impact on the video game world, you just don't see it. There's a lot of indie games that you have reference to for like through Steam and stuff, and so like I'm sure they're out there, but they're not mainstream for me to be able to take that up. So as far as red flags go, like I tend to steer away from dark fantasy games now. Just not because of what they potentially could do to my perspective or my playing. I just have kind of lost that taste due to like the Diablo experience. Not that the game loop was fun, like all the mechanics are there for it to be super addictive and to get fully immersed in it, but that's more of a personal choice on my end. Like I know now my limit when it comes to these kind of games. So red flags for me would be, when it really kind of gets that parallel between Christian values and their world values that they're trying to mix in with there. And so you read the reviews, you kind of understand the game, where it's coming from before you even play and touch, then you can kind of like discern your way through it. But again, that's kind of like coming from my own personal background. What that did was it really kind of showed me limits to what I need to be investing in time wise. So maybe not full immersion or spending a day and a half or 2 days, just playing games, because that was a part. That's how I escaped. That was a lot of like stress relief. It was how you can just kind of detach a little bit and just fold into a character you're immersed with. I really like RPGs, which are role playing games, and so a lot of it is story driven game telling. So you could argue magic one way or the other, spells, incantations, games that kind of use the occult for the purpose of being, it's the occult, like it's edgy, we're going to use it, not really fully knowing exactly what they're putting. I steer away from those games. Is magic bad? I don't know. It's up for interpretation, I think, as far as like what they're using, because there's definitely a gray area there. What is your heart posture? Where are you coming from as a person while you're engaging with these games? What is your idea of good and evil? If it's rooted in the Bible, you should probably steer clear from places that are going to challenge that, like that ideology or that thought process in you. I choose to do so now. And that's not a blanket statement towards all Christians. Like, you should do this. You should. I definitely think it's a personal choice. But that being said, games can only tell a story in a way that movies can't, that books can't. They allow for an artistic expression of what the creators, the content creators, were looking to do with the story. And so, I enjoy that medium almost as much as I enjoy watching movies. So, it's kind of hard for me to dismiss an entire medium, but I really feel like God hasn't said, hey, you need to put video games down. I mean, so, that's kind of where my heart has kind of changed, since then. As I get older, the time, commitment, responsibilities that I have as a father and as a business owner and a husband, like that kind of weans down a little bit. Video games will always hold a special place in my heart. Like, I'm sure you're the same way. But the idea of them just being gone completely, probably not in my realm, but what I choose to consume has wildly changed over the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Bible does say that we are to make the best use of our time, right? And in everything we do it to glorify God.
Sure.
And so there is kind of that root question of like, is this something that's going to be glorifying God, or is it just me kind of enjoying? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with enjoying, but it's like, sometimes if there's something we're holding so tightly, it's like, I mean, and even good things can become idols, or it can become bad things in our life because then we want that control or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also a little bit before we were filming, you say you were doing some research and Diablo had changed some things.
No, I think what I was kind of finding out about Diablo is I think they made a conscious decision not to fully grasp onto occult language or the satanic rituals or any of that kind of stuff, yet they still have that as, I guess, symbolically, but there's no meaning behind the words.
But before they did, or something?
Yeah, but
okay.
yeah, so they definitely made a conscious choice to kind of make sure that it wasn't impacting Judeo-Christian values or whatever. Yet you see these parallels. So it was, I don't know, my interpretation, my personal experience, like, I think it's a blend between where I was at and what I was allowing in, and that medium just happened to amplify it. I think that's probably the best way to kind of sum up my experience. But I think you had related it to sugar intake in the body. I looked at it kind of like, drinking, like alcohol, right? Bible says beware of drunkenness, right? Like, but it doesn't say do not drink. So do you be responsible with it? Do you kind of question, like, okay, well, what am I putting in my body?
Right.
Am I going to question the medium that I'm looking at? Sure. Am I going to understand now at a different level based off of my experiences? Absolutely. So yeah,
and I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's like, no one's like holding me up at gunpoint being like, you must play, or,
Sure.
right? So a lot of these choices that we make in our lives, it's our decision, and, what are we choosing, and what is that conversation with the Lord about? And I think it's, I mean, as someone who doesn't play video games, I think like I could live my whole life very full and connected with friends and family, and
Sure.
And not need to be spending time playing. But there's also things that I think I scroll too much on social media, right? Like that's not no bueno either, right? So I think there's just different areas that like, oh, am I using this as a comfort? Am I just trying to avoid or distract or numb out or self-medicate, or what is it that I'm doing? Because sometimes, like, food, I comfort eat, and food is good, right? And maybe stay away from microplastics. But like, I may or may not do an episode on that. But I think it's like, there's just kind of this like freedom, like we can choose, and we have all these options. So what are we choosing, and why? So just kind of based on what you know about video games, are there some that you're like, stay far away, like I mean, I think like, Grand Theft Auto or something, like like from what I heard with just the violence and the sexual content and this and that. But I don't know. Like, are there any off the top of your mind?
My gosh!
Yeah,
I just
sounds like
one.
Matthew has something.
There's this one that's made. I'm not gonna say what it is, but the game is literally hell.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
It's hell the game.
Maybe
you wake up. There's a particular artist. He's a guy. Do you remember the Alien movies?
Yeah.
But the artist that made the Alien aesthetically art, this game takes a lot of inspiration from that artist.
Really?
Oh no! yeah. Some really creepy stuff. But there's a game that's literally that style of art, and you wake up in hell and you're trying to get out of hell. Which you obviously I've never played the game, but I think like it's one of those cyclical games where you can't, or maybe you can. I haven't played it, but I've seen gameplay on it, and it's it's that like macabre, gory mess that like that's what they wanted to create. They wanted to create a piece of work that was deeply dark. Whether the creators believed in the heaven and hell from the Bible, I cannot say. I didn't research the game. I just have seen the gameplay of it. But we're talking about a game that literally like the whole idea is to immerse yourself in the most darkest, most painful, scorned experience you can ever have. And to create like literally the engaging with the world is pain and misery and torture. Jeez. Like you have to put your arm into a machine that like shoots, rips it apart and like to open a door or something. Like pain and misery and torture is built into like just walking through this experience. And so like there's no way that you can play that game and be like, oh yeah, I feel so much better in my mental space. Like how like you may have a macabre curiosity towards it, and like that may be something that's fueling you to play the game, but like there's really not a lot of positive there that's going to do something good for you. There are many other things that you could play and a lot of things to stay away from, but at the end of the day you still need to ask the Holy Spirit, like, what are you telling me? What are you coming again? Because the game can look fine on the outside and be not right for you at the time. A game could be fine for you 5 years ago, but it's wrong for you today. You have to hold the stuff loosely and be able to surrender it. Otherwise it's taking a place in your heart that it doesn't belong, because Jesus should be there, not the game. If there's this pain and tight holding on to that, I don't want to surrender it, that's a great red flag. You need to surrender it. And so there's definitely, so like if my son was, I don't have a kid, but if I had a son and he was like, hey dad, I want to play this game, or what do I stay away from? What do I play? A great warning for someone who's not exposed to this or doesn't have a basis is like, look, if you're dealing, especially in the fantasy world, this is getting into just my worldview or whatever, especially in my view of fiction, where in a fantasy world, magic is steeped and deeply embedded in the system. Sure. There are things that are very fictional that don't have a basis in the real world. And there are things that are fictional, but they're very heavily based in the real world. Right. And so we're talking about, especially when you compare to like, and again, I know this is a topic that people can disagree with, and I'd be open to that discussion. But like, a Gandalf from Lord of the Rings being like, you shall not pass, right? Moment to like a seer who uses his tarot to experience and warn a character, right? You could look at that and be like, well, he's looking into the magic world and helping someone and saving someone's life. Yeah, the outcome is good. The means to get there is, whether it's written in a way that's fictional, there is a real practice of tarot and divination, and people in the real world practice it. And my understanding is that when people engage with power in the real world, if it's not from God, it's something else, and that something else is probably a demon giving you that power, because they do have power. And so that's where it's like, hey, look, if you're playing a game and there's occultism or stuff that is based off of real world magic, like real world religions and stuff that like delve into stuff that as a Christian you go, that is probably more on the demonic side here. Right. That's where I'm like, hey, you should probably not engage with that, versus, another game. So, but ultimately you gotta test it before the Holy Spirit and stay open and surrender what he asks you to surrender, because he is a good shepherd and he can guide you beside still waters where you go, green grass. You didn't know that grass has a bunch of poison ivy in it, though. You know what I mean? And so always listen to his advice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it says, you lead me down the paths of life in Psalms. And it also, in the upper room discourse, Jesus says, the Spirit of truth will guide you into all truth, right? So we are his children. We hear his voice. He is our shepherd. He is the life, the truth, and the way. And so we have confidence in that, and knowing that, hey, we can bring him into these daily decisions like, hey, I have a few hours tonight. What should I do? How should I spend my time? So do you have any final words you like to share before we wrap up? Some just encouragement to someone who might be dabbling in video games, who have been playing, considering all the things related to video
Add me on Steam. My username. No, okay.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. Step up to the plate.
Yeah.
And let's make some awesome video games that glorify the Lord. Come on, guys. Let's do it.
Yeah, creativity is definitely there. Like you were saying, Unreal 5, you can download it and you can just play around. I mean, the tools are there. They're accessible. Like having Christian-based games, even if it's not like in your face, something that tells a story, it's something that's wholesome, it's a message, definitely go for it. Like, it'd be really cool. Players like me want to see that. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening. If you play video games, if you play Diablo or Minecraft or any of the things we've talked about, let me know your thoughts. What are your comments, feedback that you have for us? And until next time, live free in truth. Okay.
That's a wrap, yo.